Well, I'm glad to be here after a long flight. Beautiful spot. Okay, are we on? All right. I want to just give you a few ideas of some things that I would like to cover with you on this weekend. We will be talking about country living, growing foods that heal, and why foods are making us sick. We'll have a handout for you later which shows a chart, and you'll see a tremendous increase in disease in the people in North America, matter of fact all over the world, just in the last 20 years or so. And our food is actually making us sick. So why it makes us sick and how we can reverse that, how we can have very, very good food. I will go over Ellen White's tree planting method. That's a little bit of divine wisdom. She was given a vision. She says in the night season she was shown by an angel how to plant a tree. And when I was a 13-year-old kid, I came across this method. I loved gardening, and see if I can stand someplace where we don't get feedback here. Was a 13-year-old kid. My church in Baltimore, Maryland, invited Herbert Clarence White to come and give a week-long seminar on organic gardening. Well, we lived a long ways from the church, and I had, a 13-year-old kid can't drive, so I had to twist my dad's arm to take me there, and he did. He took me every night for a week, and then all day on Sunday. And so I planted trees the Ellen White method. Now, for many, many years, I had no idea whether that was just a good idea, like it's a good idea to brush your teeth, or whether there was some divine wisdom behind it. Then a fellow named Ian Jones was teaching at Weimar, and he told me how to find that in the Spirit of Prophecy, because for many years it was not even published there. So he told me how to look it up, how to read it and use it, and anyway, from the time I was 13 years old until now, I'm 75 now, any place that I've lived for a year or more, with the exception of, all right, are we on now? Okay. Any place I lived for a year or more, with the exception of Academy, I planted trees that way. They have all done well. If you plant trees this way, you will get incredibly good results, and we'll see pictures of it there. So, all right, looks like it's going to be okay for us now. Thank you.
A little closer to you.
Okay.
That'll be better.
All right, thank you. Yeah, that is better, isn't it? There, great. Okay. Sunday I want to demonstrate. We want to actually go out here and plant a couple of trees. We'll plant one the Ellen White method. We'll plant one what we call the forestry method, or what most people do, just dig a hole and put the tree in the ground there. And now I like to do that wherever we give seminars, because then next year when you come back you can see the difference between those two trees. And for as long as the world is here and you can look at those, you can see the difference, and it'll make an incredible difference there. Also, if those trees are fruit trees, and I think Mel will get us fruit trees here, then not only will you be able to see the difference in the trees, you'll be able to taste the difference in the fruit there. I'd like to know, by chance, have any of you planted trees this way, the Ellen White method? Okay, great. We've got a few ends around here. Great, thank you. There. I want to go into Bible principles in agriculture. There's some information in the Bible, especially the books of Moses, about planting trees and companion planting, what to do or not to do as far as companion planting, when to eat the fruit, principles of fertilizing. One thing that's interesting to me is that we can buy corings in the Dead Sea. The University of Tel Aviv has done corings, and so when they bring these corings up, they can read it like you would, if you cut down a tree, you can read those rings, and you can see if it was a wet year, a dry year, or if there was a fire that went through that year, or whatever. We can read the past history of that tree. We can do the same thing with corings here. And what they're reading here is as the winter and spring rains wash extra things into the Dead Sea, they're seeing what is being washed into that Dead Sea, and they can tell what the calciums were like, for instance, way back into Joshua's time there, and then right on down to present time. A very interesting thing is that the calcium that was there in Joshua's time is a high calcium, low magnesium lime. We can get that in a few places in America today, but it's high calcium, low magnesium lime. You remember that it was Caleb and Joshua who went in with the spies, and it took 2 men to bring one grapevine, one grape cluster back. Yes. Boy, that would be something. I would guess that would have to be close to 100 pounds of grapes on one cluster there. Now, I've never seen anybody do this yet, but I'd love to see it done right here. Somebody was willing to plant grapes that way, Ellen White's method there, and see if we couldn't match what Caleb and Joshua brought back from the Promised Land. That would be interesting there. Another thing I would like to cover with you is there are principles, there are things that we know from the Bible and the Spirit of Prophecy as to the condition of things prior to Noah's flood. Well, we know that trees were many times bigger than even the largest ones today. In Australia and outback, there's an area where there are fossils. Today in Australia, there's a pine tree, and when that particular variety is mature, it's about 60 feet tall, full-grown tree there. In the outback, in these fossil records, they have found one of those trees that is 300 feet long to the first branch. And from there, the fossil is broken and they can't follow it further. But that's just 300 feet to the first branch there. Of course, we know about the mammoths that we find up in Alaska and Siberia, huge animals. There's a hornless rhinoceros where they found the skeleton, fossil record of it. It is 18 feet tall at the shoulder. If I'm about 6 feet tall, can you imagine that animal 3 times my height at the shoulder, and then it's 30 feet long? That's a beast. Many such examples like this. I want to give you a couple here. A dragonfly. Today we have dragonflies, and maybe they're about this big. Pretty little insects as they fly around, eating mosquitoes. And in the fossil record, they are 30 and 32 inches wide. Huge insects there. And there's a horsetail plant, and today it comes up maybe 4 or 5 feet tall there. We find those in the fossil record 50 feet, even 60 feet tall. So obviously things grew much better and more lush, more vigorous before Noah's flood. Oh, I want to give you one more here. Not too long ago they found a tomb over by Mount Ararat. Now, the people there in Turkey, they say this is Noah's tomb. Well, he didn't have dog tags on it, so we don't know that it's Noah for sure in that tomb. What we do know is that the skeleton in that tomb is of a 12-foot tall man, 12 feet there. Now, if I'm about 6 feet, if I were 12 feet tall, I'd have to be, out this way too. And when you do the math for that, that means that man, that 12-foot tall man, had to weigh something over 2,000 pounds there. So we know that Adam was rugged and well proportioned and more than twice the height of men today. So there were giants in the land, and when we have copied in our own humble way, trying to get that water canopy above the growing area, we've had very unusual results. In Tennessee, in western Tennessee, there's a fellow named Dr. Calvin Dentz, and he made a couple of these greenhouses with water above. And I want to tell you that that he has gotten growth as much as 10 times greater. For instance, inside that greenhouse, underneath the water canopy, so that all the sunlight had to, all the sunlight had to go through the water, and then through the glass or the plastic, and then, and then to the plants. Now, when we do that, we get some interesting results. And for instance, inside we got as much as 10 times more growth than the same identical plant a few feet outside that greenhouse. They're same soil, same water. It's the difference of the water canopy there. And very, very interesting results. We'll go into that later there. I also want to talk to you about how to make your soil permanently fertile. One of these days it's going to be very difficult to buy and sell. Today we can still buy, we can still sell. But one of these days it's going to be difficult, and there are ways that you can make your soil permanently fertile, and I'll go into that in some detail later there. Okay, here's a picture of some things that we did in, let me see if I can go back here a minute. Okay, this is in Brazil in 2012. I went down there, they wanted me to come down and teach them how to plant trees this method, and I said, no, that's too expensive a trip. Just talk to me on the phone and through email, and we'll take care of this. And they said no, they wanted me to come. So I went to, this was a little school of the prophets in northeast Brazil, very poor part of the country there. A year and a half now, I just went down there and spent 3 weeks planting trees. We planted 450 fruit trees, and we planted a couple thousand other trees for screening and hedging and whatever there. A year and a half later, I went back. Now, we had put little sticks into the ground, and I want you to look at this first little stick here. A year and a half later, you can see that it's way above my head there. Here's an orange tree. Now, it wasn't quite as high. The orange tree was more like maybe 4 feet or so and 4 feet wide. It was covered with white blossoms and with little green oranges and medium and big size green oranges, and they hadn't quite ripened yet there. Just in a year and a half. Tremendous growth there. Okay, here's a cashew tree, and you can see with my hand there, tremendous growth there. Now they do have the advantage of, I don't know if I'm missing this or what. If I tuck this in, will it keep it? Okay, we'll try to keep the background noise down. We planted these trees, and in a year and a half later, now this is a cashew tree. It already has ripe cashew fruit, and then the cashew nut. And you can see, let's see. Okay. I'm trying to use the marker here. Can I do that? That's okay. I don't want to use that.
Take a slide and then. Yeah, that'll work.
Okay, now it'll work. Yeah. Okay, so you can see the size of the fruit here. Let's go forward one.
Just a second, the slide. Hang on, I bumped this.
Okay.
Lost our screen. Oh, there it is. Okay. You didn't see you did the last one. So back. That should work there.
Okay. So does that show? Yeah. Okay. Now let's go to the next slide and do the same thing. Okay. Okay, you can see the cashew fruit there and the cashew nut underneath it. And now this had ripe cashew fruit on it, and the people there they raved about the cashew fruit, how great it was. So my buddy and I went down there. It's one of the trees we planted, and we picked some ripe cashew fruit. You see, the fruit comes on first, and then the nut's down here at the end. See, this is the nut down here. So we picked some of that ripe fruit and ate it, and it's nasty. We took it up to the kitchen, and I guess if you put enough sugar with anything, you can make it taste good. You like it? Okay. Okay, guava trees, about the same thing with the guava trees. They're maybe 4 feet tall and 4 feet wide. And now these were tiny little twigs when we put them in the ground, little size of a pencil there. These were grafted trees, and for most of your trees you do want grafted trees, but anyway, covered with white flowers and little green guavas and big green guavas and ripe guavas, as you see in this picture here. There's another guava tree, and there's that's an avocado tree there. It did not have avocados yet there. But you can see the size of that avocado tree there, just tremendous growth there. Also, the mangoes did not put on in a year and a half. They had not started to bear fruit yet. They had good growth like that there. Okay. Oh, we lost it there. Okay. 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 Last week I was at a farm. This was in Camino, California. And the man says, those pear trees my uncle planted 60 years ago. I want to tell you that those pear trees, 60 years old, are not as big as this avocado tree that you see on the screen here. You'll just get tremendous growth and help when you do this. So we'll go in and we'll demonstrate that. We won't demonstrate any of that tonight. We'll just talk about things, and then we'll go tomorrow, and on Sunday we'll actually go out and do some things there. This is a little school of the prophets, and they train their young people there to go out and give Bible studies. They train them to go out and to knock on the doors and to ask people if anybody needs prayer in that home, and if anybody is sick in that home, or if anybody has any special needs, maybe they need food there. But they go out and they take this little survey. They cover that little town just very, very well, and so that they can minister to these people there. Now, we have schools of the prophets. We have like Souls East and Souls West and Doug Batchelor School, and they're just all of these different schools sending young people out, and older people too for that matter, to do ministry. And most of those people are either put into volunteer jobs or maybe into a stipend. And lots of those people are young people who are going to fall in love and get married and have children, have families, and that's a good thing, but they can't live on a stipend. So we need to figure out a way where they can make a reasonable living. I'm not talking about getting rich, but I'm talking about making a healthy living to support a family. And we can do that. We can do it through farms and combining the farm and the colporteur work there. Pardon me? Yes, yes. Well, since you said amen, I'm going to take this a little farther. When I was a young man and I was in academy and college, I would go out in the summertime and I would canvass so that I could earn a scholarship and go back to school the next year. Most of those people I saw one time in my whole life, and that was it. And that's true with most colporteurs there, most of our literature evangelists there. On the other hand, we all have to eat, and we have to eat often. So if you have a farm, you can provide the food to the people, and we become friends with those people through the food there. Now, by combining the farm and the colporteur work together, we strengthen the colporteur and we strengthen the farm. Yes. Now, growing food this way, growing food so that we have high nutrient value, is more costly than taking all the shortcuts that Monsanto and other big chemical companies use there. So it is more expensive to grow food this way. Now, when I go to the grocery store and I look at two pieces of produce, let's take a butternut squash, for instance, there. One is, let's say, $1 a pound, 99 cents a pound. The other one is $4 a pound. They look identical. You cannot tell the difference. If I pick them both up, the only difference I could tell is that the more expensive one is a little heavier than the cheaper one. That's the only difference. Otherwise, I can't see it. So human nature is that we would buy the cheaper one. Why would I pay the difference there? But when I know the difference in taste and in food value and nutrition to my body and my family then I don't want that cheap produce. I want the more expensive one, and I'll quickly pay the difference for it. It's not always that much of a difference, but it is a difference there. So, the colporteur, the literature evangelist, educates the public as to why this food is worth more and why we would want to buy that. Maybe even signing people up for these community-supported boxes that some people sign up for and take out there. So it supports the farmer, and the farmer then supports the colporteur by creating an income, a residual income that goes back to the colporteur there. In the last 70 years in the Adventist Church, both the colporteur work and agriculture has largely been lost from the Adventist Church there. Now, part of the reason for losing the colporteurs is that laws changed, and so it became just impractical, not possible. The colporteur had to be an independent agent there. Prior to that time, about 70 years ago, the literature evangelist, the colporteur, was actually an employee of the denomination. And in a few places on earth, that's still the case, where the colporteur is an employee of the denomination. Where that is true, the colporteur work is strong in the Adventist Church. Here in North America, we've lost the colporteur work. So, if we have a residual income, I'm not talking about a huge amount, but every time that CSA box goes out, if there is, let's say $2 or $3 that goes back to that call porter who sold that, then that's building a residual income, and after a period of time, that literature evangelist could have a regular income, so that even if he's sick one week or if he takes off to go to camp meeting a week or whatever, there's still some income coming in to support him. So both would benefit greatly from that. Okay, is Felicia back yet? She's not back yet. Okay. Pardon me? Shortly, okay. Well, what it tells me, I've got a handout that I want to give out, and we don't have it here yet. So let's let's just go into let's go into this. Here we have a text from Jeremiah. God is talking to Jeremiah. It's Jeremiah 33, 1, 2, and 3, really. Okay. So here's the word from Jeremiah. Moreover, the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah a second time, while he was still shut up in the court of the prison, saying, Thus says the Lord who made it, the Lord who formed it, to establish it. The Lord is his name. What God is doing here is establishing that he is the creator. He is the one who created the earth, and he said, I am talking to you. So now let's go to verse 3. And God says, Call to me, and I will answer you and show you great and mighty things which you do not know. Another translation says, Cry out to me, and I will tell you things that you could not possibly know. There. What a tremendous offer that is from God himself. That if we'll cry out to him, that he will teach us things that we could not possibly know. Because we have that, let's ask him right now for that kind of a blessing here. Okay? Father in heaven, you do such great things for us. You provide such beautiful food and flowers and trees. You provide health and pleasure. And you have promised now to teach us things that we could not possibly know otherwise. So we thank you for that, and we ask you for that now. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, let's just go into preparing the soil here. There are... anybody here familiar with Dr. Mentleiter's method of gardening? Anybody here know that? Jacob Mentleiter's methods? No? Okay. Well, all right. Well, a lot of what I learned came from him. He did a tremendous job for the Adventist Church. But anyway, that's one method. And then we have something here called the ocean water method. And we'll go into that a lot. How to use ocean water to absolutely make the best tasting food you have ever had in your whole life. Now, where do you get ocean water? Well, we're a long ways from the ocean, and it'd be pretty expensive here. It's very inexpensive to get the ocean water salts. That means ocean water dehydrated with nothing added and nothing taken out. Okay, that's very important because there's lots of ocean salt in the market today. You can get pure sea salt, and it's been purified, and they have taken out all those minerals that we want, and they've purified it, and then to that they have added aluminum so that it'll pour through your salt shaker easily, and it is pure poison. And you don't want to eat it, and you don't want to put it in your garden. It's poison there. But what we do want is the ocean water dehydrated with nothing added and nothing taken out there. Now, there are 92 different minerals in the ocean water, all in a perfect balance. That means the percentage of one mineral to the next, always remains the same. It does not change. It doesn't matter whether it's the Atlantic, the Pacific, the Dead Sea. Doesn't matter which ocean we go into. That percentage is always the same there. The greatest, or the mineral that is the most prevalent there is sodium chloride, just salt. There, we need the salt. Don't take that out. We need the salt. That helps to bring the other minerals into the plant. There. Now there are these 92 different minerals, and they go all the way down to, some of these are in the salt in parts per million, and some of them are only in there in parts per billion. Now, an interesting thing is we analyze the ocean water and we analyze human blood, and they match. They match. Almost perfectly, not quite. There are three differences. First is that most of the iron, when it's washed into the ocean, drops to the ocean floor. There's almost no iron in the water itself. In our blood, there's a great deal of iron. And so our blood is red and the ocean water is clear. There. The second difference is phosphate, and phosphorus does a very similar thing as the iron. So there's lots of phosphate in the ocean. It's in bones, it's in shells, and it's on little modules on the ocean floor. There are even companies that make machinery to sweep the ocean floor and harvest phosphate there. But there's not enough in the water itself to grow land plants. I've tried it, and you just don't get good land plants. You've got to add phosphate there. So the iron, the phosphate. The third difference is that all life on Earth is electrical, including our plants. Now, in the ocean, with all these mineral salts, there's no problem for the electrical energy to freely flow through that ocean there. In land, it's nitrogen that brings that electrical current into the plant. So we have to pay attention to those three things. And I believe that we could go almost anywhere on Earth. You could go to a third world country someplace and pay attention to those three things and use the ocean water, and I think you could grow a very healing, healthy crop by watching those things. Matter of fact, earlier this year I was in Jamaica, and of course Jamaica's surrounded by the Caribbean Ocean there, and those people can grow wonderful crops there. Now, we couldn't ship things from the United States there, but they can grow wonderful crops and very, very tasty crops if they'll follow that. Okay. Then there's what we call a high bricks garden. Now, there was a German doctor named Brix, B-R-I-X, and he was the first one that kind of described this back in the 1800s. And so Dr. Kerry Reams just made this name Brix up to describe the mineral nutrients in a plant, in the plant juices there. And tomorrow night, I think we'll have or tomorrow we'll have some fruit here, and Brix will do a test on different fruits, and you can see for yourself the difference in the Brix readings here. So anyway, a high Brix, and that's a good way of testing this stuff here. Okay, and then there's the Ellen White planting methods that we want to go through here. And there's our text that we will have. Okay, let's go into taking a soil sample. Okay, almost all soils are badly depleted and out of balance. Now, this is beautiful soil down here in the garden. I really like it. But you'll see the soil test that was taken right here, and you'll see that we have some very good things and we have some things that are very, very poor. And so we use that soil test so that we can balance that soil and get the good things that we need into it. Soil test will tell you what is needed to balance it and bring it to fertility. So how do you take a soil sample? Well, you need a clean bucket, clean shovel. That means one without rust on it. If we use an instrument that has rust on it, we are going to pollute our soil sample. So if you don't have a shovel or something that does not have any rust on it, it's good to use stainless steel. That works. But let's say that all you have is a rusty shovel. We're going to push that into the ground, and then as you bring this shovel full of dirt out, then take with your hand, take a scoop of that and put it into your bucket. Take a scoop of that soil that has not touched the rust. Okay, so you can still get a good sample there. Now, I use a clean bucket. I take a bucket and I put a brand new clean plastic bag in that, and so I put my soil samples in there. You want to gather about a gallon of material to maybe 4 or 5 different places, at least 3 different spots in your garden there. Then I bring that back, and at my house I got a picnic table, and I put another clean garbage bag out there, and I put all the soil in there, and I mix it all up. Now take out any sticks, any stones. Let's see if I can get this to forward one. Okay. Okay. I need to go one further here. Okay, so dig down about 6 inches and place a shovel full in your bucket there. You want this at least in 3 different places. You want to take out the sticks, the rocks. We want to mix together until it's fine. Pour it out on a work surface and remove the stones, roots, any organic matter there. Now, out of that, let's say you've got a gallon or so of material there. Out of that, you're only going to need about a quart. And if you will take now a quart Ziploc bag and send that much off to the soil lab, that's enough. That's all that you need. But see, we've mixed this all together so we have a good average of what your soil is like there. Okay, you need to fill out the form. Now, okay, need to fill out the form and send it in, and I'm kind of handicapped here without those handouts. Then we'll get the right balance. We'll figure out what's needed for that soil. We'll mix that together and we'll put it out into the garden there. All right. When your soil amendments come, if you're getting them from a lab that does this, a company that does this, what I do is take half of it and I will spread that as evenly as I can in that garden. Let's say you've got a 1,000 square foot garden. I'll take half of what needs to be spread there. I'll spread it there. Now it'll come in all different sizes. Some will be fine powder, some will be sand, some will be little pellets, and so you can't put it through a spreader. It doesn't work. So I take it and I just kind of sling it around, and that means I've got a line of it here and a line of it there and so forth. And then I've got the other half, and I can go back in and I can fill it in. And then if I rototill it or dig it in with my shovel, it will be mixed just fine. Some of the things that we'll put in here, you'll see, some of the things that we're going to put into that garden are going to be in very, very small amounts. Maybe a pound or a quarter of a pound even per 1,000 square feet. So we've got some things that are in very, very small amounts. You cannot spread that evenly over 1,000 square feet. So by mixing it all together with the other bigger stuff and then broadcasting, it'll be just fine there. Okay, there I am in a small garden just spreading that stuff out, and then we want to till it in or dig it in by hand, whatever we can there. Okay. Another thing that we want to talk about is forming the rows, and this is something that I get from bit lighter, that that helps us a lot. You can see that I've got strings there. Let's go a little further. Okay, forming the rows. With stakes and string, mark the rows you want to create 5 feet apart on center. That means from the center of one row to the center of the next is going to be 5 feet. And if you have the room, make it 6 feet apart, because if you grow this way, you're going to get some pretty big growth, and you're going to want that space in between. I grew an acre of tomatoes with just 5 feet on center, and it was a real pain because you couldn't get through the rows. The plants were so big and so productive there. Okay, double digging also, I want to show you that, demonstrate that to you. The purpose is to loosen the soil deeply while keeping the topsoil on the top and the subsoil underneath. So you want to remove one, let's take an area that's about, let's say you're doing this by hand. Now if you're on a farm, we use tractors and we use subsoilers. What did you call that? Scuffler? Scuffler, okay. So if you call that a scuffler or subsoiler or something, if you're on a farm, you have a tractor, use that. But in your own backyard, this is the easy way to do it. So let's take a 2-foot section of soil, and let's take that and as deep as you dig, 1 shovelful there, let's put that into a wheelbarrow on the side. Okay, then underneath that, now we've got a 2-foot by 2-foot hole here. Underneath that, I want you to dig down as deeply as you can with a fork or the shovel or whatever and loosen that. We just want to double dig, we want to loosen that. Now do not take that subsoil out of there. If you take that subsoil out and put it on the top, you're going to make your gardening much more difficult. So leave it in there. We want to aerate it. This is a good place if you have homemade compost. It's a good place to put some of that because it's down there deep enough that the pardon me? Thank you. The bacteria and the microbes are going to digest it and take care of it, and it's deep enough so that the weed seeds are not going to germinate there. Okay. Loosen the soil you just dug as deeply as your shovel or fork will allow. Do not remove this soil. Now take the next 2-foot section and dig that and put it on top of this hole that you just made and loosen the soil there. Then do the same thing in this next hole where you go down and loosen that soil. Now you go to the next section and you just keep doing this until you get to the end of the row. When you get to the end of the row, you're going to have a hole down there at the end. Now take the wheelbarrow and put that soil down there. This is a way that will give you the least amount of physical effort and still get this job done. Now as you loosen this, especially the first time you do it, it might be very difficult. So just do it as deeply as you can, comfortably, and it'll be a little easier next year for you to handle it. Okay, let's go to the rows now. Make the first row. You mark the rows with your strings. You don't have to. You can put a marker on one end and a marker on the other and just eyeball it. The plants don't know the difference, but you might want to do this perfectly. So if we have 5 foot on center rows, and now we've got 18 inches. Well, let me go to the next picture here. This will be easier. Oops. Okay. Down the center, between those 2 rows, is our center line there. And okay, so our center line is going to go right. Well, I didn't do that right, did I? For some, oh, there it is, okay. So the center line goes right through where we made the red mark there. Now, the center line of the next row is going to be over here. I keep losing that, don't I? Okay. Off to the right side there, you can see that's where the center line, the next center line is going to be. Now, I've actually got about 18 inches here for that whole row. That's going to be a double row there. And it's got little dikes on either side, so that holds the fertilizer in the row, and it holds the water in there. If we have an irrigation system, T-tape, it holds the water in there. So we want that. So what we've done is rototill this whole area. We've double dug, and then we take the fertilizer that we've spread, and we've raked that from the center aisle. Half of it comes this way, and half of it comes from the other side. And so we actually have a bit of a hill in the middle here. And so that the soil that we're planting in, that the plants are growing in, is going to be deeper here. First we double dug it, and now we have raked the soil from the center so that this is much deeper for us here. And we do the same thing on the next area. A good experiment might be for you to double dig a row and then single dig another row and plant both rows the same day, the same seed, the same plants, and same fertilizer, and just see the difference. I think you'll quickly convince yourself that there's value in double digging. And Ellen White says that we should dig deeply and that we should dig often. And you'll see that there's wisdom in that. Okay, so we raked the soil from the sides to build up the 18-inch wide row using a level, and a 2x4 board about 8 feet long to level the planting bed. This is important for irrigation, fertilizer, and weed control. Now, you want this level, and if you're on a bit of a hill like we are here, then make it in steps. So make that row level and step it down, and make it level and step it down, even if you have to do it several times there. Otherwise, when we irrigate the water, or even a big rain, the water's going to come and it's going to all wash down, and your fertilizer is going to wash down, and your soil is going to wash down. And but if you make it level, it will sink in, and you'll hold the fertilizer, you hold the water there, and you'll have just much better control there. Then for weed control, we want this also because we have this little ridge on either side, and now it's not a problem in the middle if you have a rototiller or if you have a wheel hoe or whatever to get in the middle and take the weeds out. But on this hill, as we're on that little ridge, we go through with a rake, and we pull that hill down. So let's say the plants have been growing in there for a week, and so we go by and we pull all of these ridges down. Any weeds that are growing on them are going to dry out quickly in the sun, and then we come back in maybe a half hour, 45 minutes, and we rake those up again, and it's a quick, easy weed control there. Okay, build up the 4-inch dike on either side of the rows with your rake. The purpose is to hold the water, the planting, the bed, and eliminate weeds there. Okay, now I talked a little bit earlier about Mittleider, and nobody seemed to know who he was. It's the simplest method of gardening with consistent results. This method feeds the plant more than the soil. Now, we use a lot of things from Dr. Mittleider's, from forming the rows to some of these watering systems and weed control and so forth. Now, let me show you the results of this. So we get beautifully, perfectly formed produce, abundant growth, but the bricks or the nutrition is not as high unless we use the ocean water or soft rock phosphate and other things there. Now, Dr. Mittleider was an interesting man. He barely graduated from academy, and all of his buddies were going on to La Sierra and Pacific Union College and Walla Walla and whatever. They were all, you know, going on to college. He was just glad to be out of school there. He graduated at the bottom of his class there. By the time his life was over, he had 4 doctorate degrees. He never went to school a day in his life again except to teach. Those 4 doctorate degrees were all honorary degrees, well earned. One of them from the most prestigious agricultural school in all of the Soviet Union there. Another one, you know, Dr. Midland. Okay, yes. Yes, did some very interesting work. Incidentally, today, there are literally millions of what we call Mittleiter gardens in the former Soviet Union there. He was there teaching about the time the Soviet Union broke up. They had severe economic pressure. People needed a way to make a living, to have food, and it just kind of took off there where it seemed like it struggled elsewhere in the world there. Anyway, there are literally millions of those gardens there. Now, I had the privilege of taking the last class that Dr. Mittleiter ever gave in his life. When he came out with his first book, he's got a bunch of them out there, big thick book called Food for Everyone. Got a copy of that and started experimenting with it in my backyard. In that book, he is advocating the use of chemicals that today are illegal in most of the world. But that's what they knew back there, and that's what they used. By the time he got to the end of his life, in this very last class he ever taught, he was walking across the campus at Weimar College with me, and we were talking about this very thing, of what about organic as opposed to the chemicals and the things that he'd used in the past. And he said, Lynn, he said, I'd be 100% organic today, except for the nitrogens. Well, I understand that, because when we get nitrogen out of a bag, fertilizer bag, we can know exactly what it is. Okay, we can know exactly how much we're putting there. When we get fertilizer out of your compost pile or out of a manure pile, it's going to be all over the place. We don't know exactly what it is there. So it's much easier if we get it out of a bag there. Anyway, the gist of the conversation was that he was encouraging me to go forward and to develop a new fertilizer that would match or exceed his, what he called magic formula fertilizers, that would match or exceed that, but would be 100% from organic plant-based material. Now, we've done that with the help of some people at Weimar College, and we're getting excellent results from that. And when we have those handouts, you'll have a copy of that formula that you can use and you can make yourself there. Okay, what is Hybrix? It's a term invented by Dr. Kerry Reams to describe and measure the density of dissolved minerals in plant juices. And we use a refractometer that'll measure this. Your sense of taste will tell you if the Brix is good or poor. You don't really need a refractometer to tell you that there. Now, this guy, Kerry Reams, he was a very interesting guy too. He was an Adventist for part of his life. He had a severe injury in the Second World War. He was blown out of a Jeep and clear up into the trees, and doesn't remember anything until somebody cut him down out of the branches and took him to the hospital. The other men in the Jeep were all killed. They had run over a landmine there. He lived with shrapnel in his body for the rest of his life, and after some very painful exercises and what have you to get himself to where he could operate again in the United States, he went into agriculture because he thought he could do far more good for people in agriculture than he could as a medical doctor, and he was absolutely right. Now, he was a very controversial man. meaning that, for one thing, that he was way ahead of his time. And he also would he also made up his own words, like this word bricks, but that's come to be used universally. There, thank you. Thank you, I can use that. Dr. Reams taught at the University of Florida in Orlando, Florida, and one year he was growing watermelons, and he entered 3 watermelons in the state fair and won first prize. After the fair was over, he took those 3 watermelons and he put them on his desk where he taught, and the next year, when the fair came around, he entered the same 3 watermelons in the fair. Yes. And the year after that, he entered the same 3 watermelons again there. Now, he did that to show that when you grow food that's fully mineralized, that it will not rot. It does not rot. Now, we could have cut the skin on the watermelon. That would make it rot. But as long as that skin was intact, that watermelon would not rot. It would dehydrate, but it would not rot there. So fully mineralized food has a long shelf life, and it also tastes incredibly better. My youngest daughter, in what we call the ocean water row in one of my experimental gardens there, she picked a lemon cucumber. Now that's my favorite cucumber. I like the flavor of it. She picked a lemon cucumber in September one year, and you know from your own experience that you buy a cucumber at the store, you bring it home and put it in the bottom of the refrigerator, it's the first thing to turn to mush, right? Yeah. Okay. I didn't put that lemon cucumber in the refrigerator. I left it in the garage there. A year later, in September, my wife found that cucumber. She said, "Well, what's this thing?" I said, "Hey, wait a minute, don't throw that away, that's my cucumber." We didn't eat it for supper that night. It had dehydrated, but there was absolutely no rot on it there. So anyway, it's interesting how this can work. Dr. Reams became a Seventh-day Adventist. Matter of fact, he taught a Sabbath school class at the Florida Sanitarium Church there at about the time that I was a little kid, 11 years old, and had just come back from India and was going to that same church. I don't remember him. I probably was in church school with his children, but I don't remember them either. Anyway, he made a statement in that class, that Sabbath school class one time, that some of the saints got upset about. It was a true statement, but they got upset about it, and basically they excommunicated him. What do we do in the Adventist church? We disfellowship. So they disfellowshipped him. He got upset and he sold his property out in Orlando, quit his job, and he moved to Georgia. There he bought 100 and some acres and made a lifestyle center there where people would come in and be treated with the food that he would grow for all kinds of different diseases. In one particular year, they had over 30,000 people come in. Now, he had help, obviously, with 30,000 patients coming and going there. At the end of that year, he was complaining, should I say, to somebody that they had lost 6 patients the previous year. Now, of those people that had come in, there were about 30,000, but about 10,000 were considered terminal cases. Those are cases that the doctors had given up on, sent them home to die there. And of all those people, they only lost 6. What he was saying is that because those people were so sick when they came in, they did not have even 6 weeks of life left. If they had 6 weeks of life or more left, he felt like he could have saved them there. Anyway, it's a tremendous record, no matter how you do it there. The head elder, the pastor of the church there, the Orlando church, after some months drove up to Dr. Ream's place there, apologized to him, said that what had happened should never have happened, and they were right. But Dr. Reams never did rejoin the Adventist church. Matter of fact, he joked that you hadn't really lived until you'd been kicked out of at least 3 churches. So he was quite controversial no matter where he went there. Okay. Okay, so how do we achieve high bricks readings here? Dr. Kerry Reams started International Ag Labs to test the soil and custom blend fertilizers to balance it. Phosphate from phosphate rock must be the carrier for all the nutrients going into the plant except the nitrogen. Now, nitrogen and potassium in commercial growing, we pour on the nitrogen and we pour on the potassium and we get large produce, we get fast growth, and we get poor bricks there. So you go to the grocery store and you'll get big produce. We'll see this tomorrow, we'll test it, and we'll have very, very poor quality there. It looks good, but the taste is not there and the nutrients are not there. So we want phosphate rock to be the carrier to bring all of the other nutrients into the plant except for the nitrogen. And now phosphate rock is where we get this is from deposits of bones and shells, things that were buried during Noah's flood. So they dig these things up and they grind them to a fine sand, and then they wash that sand. They wash the dust off of that sand. And so the water and the dust flows off of that into a big settling pond. And when that dries up, when that settling pond dries up, what's left there is soft rock phosphate. So they take that, grind it up, and that, without being processed anymore at all, is what soft rock phosphate is. It's a very slow release in the ground. It's kind of a clay-like material. Now, what about the pile that was the fine sand that they washed there? That goes to the fertilizer factory. There it's treated with strong acids and heat, and now we end up with superphosphate or double superphosphate or triple superphosphate, and depending on how they treat it. Now, the phosphate in soft rock phosphate, the fertilizer numbers are 0, 3, 0. Okay, the first number is all of its nitrogen, the second is all of its phosphate, the third is all of its potassium. This is worldwide there. So this is only 3, so that's not a very strong high number. And if we go to a superphosphate, it'll be at least 22 and could be as high as 52. So why would we use something where we could get 52 as opposed to 3 there? Well, the reason is that this is a slow release phosphate. If we use the superphosphates, they're going to tie up with calciums in the soil, and they will tie up in bonds so tight that they are unavailable for many, many years. They're just not available to your plant for many, many years. Now, the superphosphates are good. We use them in agriculture, and they're not a poison. Properly used, the right amounts, they're not a poison. But they will tie up with calcium into tricalcium phosphate and just not be available there. So we use both. So we use the soft rock phosphate for a very slow release, and we give the super phosphate so that your plants get a good start now, this season, right away there. Okay. Okay, Okay, results of high bricks garden. Food that tastes wonderful. Nutrient levels of food is very high. Foods that heal, foods that keep you healthy and energized, superfood. You have a long shelf life. You have much less insect pressure on your plants. Now, I am not to the place where I have zero insect pressure on my plants, but I do have far less than I used to. And let me just explain that briefly to you. When a plant has everything that it needs so that its immune system is strong, that it is making high bricks sugars there, when insects eat that plant, first of all, they're not attracted to it. But if they should eat it, then they get the sugars, and it makes alcohol in them, and they die. So insects leave it alone there. The plant's immune system is strong so that it throws off diseases that might otherwise kill that plant. So it is a strong plant and will just throw off funguses and mildews and whatever there. I was in Karachi, Pakistan, and the gardener came in and said, we have a locust plague coming. And so he took a parachute and put it out over the garden and put bricks around the edge of it here, so that the garden was protected from any insects that came in. Sure enough, the next day there was a cloud of insects, cloud of locusts, so great that you could not see the sun. Now, there wasn't a cloud in the sky, but you could not see the sun. It was dark from those locusts. And we drove down the road and it was just crunch, 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 just running over locusts everywhere there. And after a day or two, the locusts all left. And so the gardener went out and he took up the parachute, and we had this nice big ring of nice green garden there. But just outside of where it was protected, if there was a broccoli plant or a cabbage plant, those locusts had eaten that plant completely to the ground and then gone into the ground to eat the root, so that it was even eaten down into the root. Now, if we have a plague like that, there isn't any high bricks food that's going to ward off that. So, but you will have far less insect damage there. Now, another thing is, though, that animals also prefer these high nutrient foods. So your garden will need protection. You will need to put up fencing. You'll need gopher fencing. You'll need deer fencing. You'll need rabbit fencing. You've got to protect that garden. Listen, if a deer gets a taste of your high bricks food in your garden, he'll pass up 10 of your neighbors' gardens to come eat yours because it tastes good to him there. Okay, here's another little illustration of how the ocean water method works. Now you can see the temperature there is 32 degrees, and there's sun in the background. That's at the back of my garage. The only time of the day that the sun hits that bank is in the heat of the day, in the middle of the afternoon, and still it's only 32 degrees there. I want you to notice that little apple branch that I'm holding there in my hand, it acts like it doesn't know it's winter. It just kept right on growing. You will get some antifreeze effect by having more minerals into your plants. More sugars, yes. So it's an antifreeze effect. Now, that particular tree lost all of its leaves down to maybe 4 or 5 on the very top by the end of winter there. And my winters aren't nearly as severe as yours there, but you will get some benefit. Yes, yes. 32, 0 Celsius. You're right, thank you. Okay, ocean water. So soil is so depleted that we do not get the nutrients we need. By adding ocean water, you are adding all the minerals, all the elements to the periodic chart you studied in high school chemistry class. except for the gases. Now you won't have that there. If you now add nitrogen and phosphate, you will have an ideal fertilizer and a perfect balance. Nitrogen, phosphate, and iron if you need it. You don't always need iron there. Okay, results of the ocean water: long shelf life. Food grown this way does not seem to rot. It may dry out, but it does not seem to spoil. The Brix rating is not necessarily higher, but the taste is excellent. Ocean water makes carrots sweet and crisp, and tomatoes with exceptionally good flavor. Its healing properties, curative effects there. Okay. I did a garden in Placerville, California at the church, and we did 6 rows, 30 feet long, and each row was a different method of growing there, just for a teaching garden there. One of those rows, just one of those rows, is what we designated the ocean water row there. I had some little kids, including a little granddaughter at the time, who came in with her little friend to the garden, and they didn't want to hear Grandpa talking. They just wanted to go play. And so they would go and they would taste things in each row in the garden. And this particular day they were tasting carrots. So they started up the top and they came down and they were tasting carrots at each. Now the carrots were not mature yet. They were maybe as big as my little finger there. They got to the ocean water row where the carrots were and they stopped. And they just decided to stay there and eat. Those carrots were sweet. The others were still bitter. You know, carrots take cold weather to sweeten up. But when you grow them with ocean water with all those minerals, you can have sweet carrots even in the middle of summer. There, yeah. Oops, what did I do here? Okay, Ellen White planting method. This planting method comes from divine wisdom. We don't know all the reasons it works, but it works, and I could never come up with this method on my own. I want you to look at the next picture here and see the difference between those 2 trees. I went too far. There it is. Okay, look at the difference between those 2 trees. They were both the same size, little sticks that big when we put them in the ground. There. One is planted the forestry method, the other is planted the Ellen White method. There. An incredible difference there. Now, that smallest tree there, unfortunately, isn't there anymore. It died last year in the drought that we had in California. There. The other one is just fine, and we'll see more pictures of those later. There. Okay, how to grow 100 pounds of tomatoes on one plant. Now, in a tomato farm, the average tomato plant will put out 6 pounds, and then the season will be over and the plant will die. By planting tomatoes this way, the Ellen White method, I picked just over 100 pounds off of one plant there. I helped some guys get started in Upper Peninsula of Michigan. It's called the Miller Family Farms. These are people that were in other businesses before, including construction and care homes, and they felt impressed that God was telling them to get into the agricultural business. So they bought this land and put in a farm, not being farmers at all. They put in a greenhouse. Now their temperatures are similar to what we have here. This is the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And so they put in a greenhouse. This is about 30 feet wide by 110 feet long, I think, something like that. The whole greenhouse, everything was prepared, all the soil was prepared, the Ellen White method, these different layers that we have there. So last October they called me and said that they were on schedule, that they would average 100 pounds per plant in that greenhouse. 100 pounds per plant. Now they did the Ellen White method. They did some other things too. Are you familiar with the conductivity meter? No? Okay. Well, we use a conductivity meter. When we get into farms, we use a conductivity meter. Now, for the backyard, we don't use it. It's about $500–600 to buy one of those things, so it's expensive there. We use nutrient drenches. When the conductivity for a plant that is a heavy feeder like a tomato, when it gets below 500, we immediately put a nutrient drench on it to get it back between 500 and 600 there. So it doesn't matter whether we had whether we had done a nutrient drench the day before, we would put that drench on again the very next day if we needed to. There, what that does is it keeps those plants growing at full speed ahead through the season until frost finally kills them there. Now, this is an Upper Peninsula, Michigan, and this was October. They'd already had killing frosts outside, but in the greenhouse they went for another month before they shut the greenhouse down for the winter. Interesting thing about their farm is that they sell at a farmer's market on Friday mornings, and they sell to a couple of different local markets there. Now, they have a little sign, so it says Miller Family Farms, and then they say buy UP, that means Upper Peninsula, buy UP there. Now, people have gotten used to this so that when they come in and they see the sign that says, oh, this is Miller Family Farms produce, that stuff disappears quickly because people have gotten used to buying that produce and knowing that it's absolutely superior in taste, and people will pay for that taste. And of course, with the taste goes the nutrition and the health benefits there. At the farmers market, I think there are 10 or 12 different farmers that have a farm stand there. Do you do that type of thing here, where you have a stand? So each farmer has his own stand there, yes. So anyway, the same thing happened there, and they were telling me that usually there's 2 or 3 people at each stand, buying bread, vegetables, and berries and whatever there, and always they have a line of 8 to 12 people at their stand because they have gotten the reputation for absolutely superior food in taste and quality there. Okay, so what is the Ellen White method? Deep digging and layers of topsoil, rock powders, compost, rocks go together to create healthy and abundant growth. The layer of rocks changes the electrical current in the soil and helps the roots to grow. You might consider growing other deep-rooted fruits and vegetables this way. Now, this layer of rock there, it changes that electrical magnetic field. If we were to go out here and dig up either a tomato plant or a maple tree or whatever, and wash all the soil off and see which way the roots were going in the ground, we would find that most of the roots, not all of them, but most of the roots are going towards magnetic north. Where's magnetic north from here? Can somebody point at it for me? North would be out this direction? Okay. So we'd find that most of those roots are following that line of electrical force. They're going towards magnetic north. There. Same thing that makes your compass needle swing to magnetic north. That way, okay. That way, okay. Same thing that makes your compass needle swing that way will make those roots grow that way. Now, not all the roots will grow there because the tree would fall over otherwise, but you'll see that most of them are there. When you go in and you buy a tree at the nursery, you can tell how that was grown in the nursery because the nursery grafts trees in a certain way, and if you understand that, you'll know how to plant that tree so that the roots are growing in the same direction. And if you were to turn that tree opposite around, it would not do as well as if you planted it in the same direction for the roots going to magnetic north there. Okay, you might consider growing other deep-rooted fruits and vegetables this way. And Let's go one more slide here. Whoops, yeah. Okay, the results of the Ellen White with healthy large growth, abundance with high Brix, and it's best combined with weekly feeding of either ocean water or mint lighter. Let's take mint lighter out because we're beyond that. We're doing mint lighter as fertilizer, but we're doing what he asked us to do. Yes, without the chemicals there. All right, I think we'll stop there for tonight, and we'll continue. We'll continue tomorrow. We've got lots to cover there. Thank you very much.